Now about food sacrifice of idols. We know that we all possess knowledge. We all possess knowledge. You know what is that knowledge? Correct. Verse 9. Our right. Our right to eat anything. Okay? That knowledge is, an idol is nothing. We all possess that. And there is no God but one. What else? Even though there are many gods, yet for us there's only one God. So what Paul is saying is, we can actually eat anything. Okay? And then he said, but, that's the problem. But knowledge puffs up. That's the heart of the problem. And so next is, why does knowledge puff up? Why does knowledge puff up now? Okay. You know first what puff up means. Okay. Yes, but here in this context, in this Bible, what is, tell me what the puffing up cost. What it cost the church? Division, yes. Where do you see that? Okay. Oh yeah, verse 11, see? Yeah. Because of that knowledge, you destroy your brother and your sister. Okay? Because of the way so knowledge puffs up when what? When? And then it what?
Without consideration.
Others. And what does that do to others? Especially those who they get offended. And they get offended, see? There's division. So what is there's division. So what is the lesson here for the original, and as yet, for the original recipients of this letter? What is the lesson here? If I am the Corinthians and I read this part of Paul's letter, what is the lesson for me? Verse 13. Good. Therefore, if what is so look at those words. Therefore. So he begins with now about therefore. Okay? Yeah, that means therefore if what I eat causes my brother or sister to fall into sin, I will never eat meat again so that I will not cause them to fall. So that's the lesson that Paul. Okay, very good. Okay, I'll answer those questions and I'll point out to you. Okay, this knowledge is defined in verse 4. We know that. It's not a guesswork because Paul says, knowledge puffs up. We know that. So that's the knowledge. Okay? And verse 5 to 6 goes on to explain the specific knowledge. We know that what? Verse 5 to 6, as we have mentioned, etc. Those are the specific facts of this knowledge, quote and unquote. Now the problem lies in verse 7. That's the problem. Not everyone knows this knowledge. Meaning, not that they don't know. Their conscience is weak and they can't accept it yet. And what do you think was the background of these people? Who do not?
They are
Maybe some of them, good. Maybe some of them are called Hellenistic Christians and Jewish Christians. Like they are actually, they live in Corinth, but they're Jews, and then they become converts to Christianity. So they still have their own tradition with them. Okay? Or these are actually Corinthians themselves, Gentiles who are so used to going to the temple that now that they know Christ, for them they cannot reconcile the two. Why are you guys still practicing these traditions when there's Christ already? Okay? So that's the problem now. Okay? So verse 8 must be the complement to such knowledge. Complement means that is what will complete that verse 1. Look at verse 8. Be careful, however, that the exercise of your rights does not become a stumbling block to the weak. A stumbling block, we all know what that means. Stumbling block means? Yeah. So what is that? What is stumbling block? If I am a stumbling block to somebody, what does that mean? Yeah, yes, in the way, stumbling block means in the Bible, even in the Old Testament, you cause someone to sin. There, that's perfect. You cause someone to sin. Therefore, it says there, if you're a stumbling block, why? In verse 10, it explains, if someone with a weak conscience sees you, you're eating, and having a good time eating like a while ago, barbecue and brisket. In, what's that? Fourth word, yes. And then, if someone weak conscience sees you with all your knowledge, and what's all your knowledge? If someone with a weak conscience sees you with all your knowledge, meaning that knowledge that pops up is, I can even show you that I can eat this, you see? But you're hurting them. Won't that person be emboldened to eat what is sacrificed to idols? So that person who sees you will also be emboldened to copy you, but later on he will feel guilty. Okay, that's there. So these weak brothers and sisters for whom Christ died is destroyed by your knowledge. When you sin against them in this way and wound their weak conscience, you sin against Christ. So it's heavy. Okay, so that is the meaning of knowledge puffs up. Okay, but usually what is the meaning of knowledge puffs up when we teach it? Arrogant. Like I heard this. Somebody told me, Pastor, you don't have to really study so much because knowledge puffs up. When you know a lot of things, when you know it's just the Bible. Because if you study and you go to Bible school, it's just a waste of time. Knowledge puffs up. So it's so far, right? So usually when we hear this, knowledge is in those people who have so many credentials, so many titles behind or after their name, they're so proud of it because knowledge puffs up. So that's not the application here. Now, if you will teach a principle, what is that? So see, it's so many, right? I can think of so many. Now, if you will teach a Bible study, what will you teach them about this? Today. So bring it today now. What? Give me an example. Give me a very creative example. Okay?
You have to be considerate.
Good, yeah.
Complete your sentence. You have to be considerate.
By not eating the
Also, yes. Yeah, I think even in our churches, in the WISL churches, there are, even in our own circle of churches, there are people who still are, when they see that other brothers and sisters like drink wine or alcohol, that's why are you doing that? And there are those, no, even Christ drank wine. He even turned water into wine. And these things cause division. They really be considerate. If there's a brother or sister, you know is so against this, don't do it.
Pastor Bruce always says, don't barbecue them. Barbecue with them.
What does that mean? What does it explain? Okay, go ahead.
Because, sometimes, I have a friend who's back here in
Okay.
now. He always, in the chat room, people talk about life, family.
Okay.
But nowadays, it's always some, in the Tagalog, versus not even talking to the people.
Okay.
So no one listens to her.
Because he uses knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Too much knowledge.
Instead
of fellowship.
Yes. Another principle is sometimes in church, instead of being always the one talking, why not try to listen?
Yeah.
Be sensitive to others, right?
Exactly.
What do you think will hurt their conscience? Now you say you're the strong Christian, you're the more knowledgeable one. Now use your knowledge to lift them up, not to put them down. So those are now the applications, and you begin to draw it from what you have learned here. Now you can go back and forth. Now look at this example in the Corinthian church. So you begin to explain the context, and then let's bring it to our time today. What is an example which may not be like this, but what is an example that we actually do in church that we're also guilty of that? Okay? So there's so many already applications, but the same principle, and the same principle is found in verse 13. Do not let your knowledge cause your brother or your sister to fall into sin. Okay? So, right? And so, that's just an example. And so, see, you got it, huh? Okay, resist the tendency to bring your bias into what you're reading. If there's anything that you can do today, read the Bible as if it's the first time you're reading it. First time. You have no background. You take away first your biases and everything that you've learned about it, and then read it again. Yeah, if what comes out is still the things that you heard before, then good. Okay, but there's a chance that you will learn more when you do this. Okay? Okay? Okay?
Yep.
Okay, question. And then,
It seems
okay.
like the way you
Mhm.
explain it,
Okay,
it seems that there is a problem.
okay,
What is the problem?
okay,
What is causing the problem?
Okay.
And what is the solution?
yes,
It
yeah.
seems that the principle is there.
Yeah, why?
That,
Yeah, true.
yeah.
That's true usually whenever you have an epistle. Because the letter is always occasion, and almost always Paul was writing because there's a problem. In Galatians was a problem. That's recited, so we always cover that. So in Galatians there's a problem also. Okay? But that's good. But if you go later, I'll teach you. But when you go to the others, like the next that we will learn, which is narratives, there's no problem. It's storytelling. So it's an occasion. Anyway, you were raising your hand.
Yeah, so my question is not about food, but say for example,
Okay.
Halloween.
Okay. So you're asking about. Okay.
Because,
Okay. Yeah.
We have some friends who invite us
Okay,
over,
okay.
Halloween party, but
Okay.
we started not to
Okay.
so
Okay.
So is that
Apply. Well, that is beyond my topic today. But that's a very good. You know what, Brother? You do a study about that. Okay? You do a study about that. You study this and try to apply it, and you see if you can apply that. Okay, this is just an example. Okay, I'm sure my examples will always create more questions. So, because if I answer those questions, we will spend our time there. Okay. Anyway, so there. So now let's go. That's true. Yeah, it's better that when you prepare something, you check it first with others. Yeah. And remember, your idea should always be in sentences. So, excuse me, I'll go to our new lesson. This is just a review of what we did yesterday. Okay. Where is that? Okay. So we're already here. Old Testament narratives. So you see what's. Remember last night, I told you that when studying epistles, it's good that you stick to the book. Yeah. So that's an example. So imagine the time you spend doing exegesis, and then you will get another verse from another occasion, another situation, another problem. So sometimes the problems are not the same. Okay. So now let's go to the Old Testament narratives. So in your notes in lesson 5, the nature of narratives, this is not there, but you can write it down. It's in your book actually. 40% of the Old Testament are narratives. 40%, so that's a big chunk, okay? So narratives, stories, today we read stories. Okay, and what is like today, in the present day, what is the best way to tell a story so people will video? Yes, movies. Okay, before they didn't have any movies, they had storytelling. Okay, and these narratives are even different from our stories today because of their nature. Okay, so let's let's go there. So narratives in general, so the outline of the lesson is this. So narratives, especially Hebrew narratives, they have a certain character by themselves. And we call that the nature of narratives. And these are called Hebrew narratives, and they have characteristics. And for us to understand, to really appreciate a narrative in the Bible, then we have to understand the characteristics of Hebrew narratives. Now, what's your favorite Bible story? Joseph. Why? Why is Joseph your favorite, Joseph?
Yeah, you can see how Joseph struggled.
The struggles, yes, yeah.
It's too much to me.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So how do we now do exegesis with Joseph? Okay. With Jonah. Okay. With these famous stories. And then let's also discuss the caution of interpreting narratives. So in your notes, narratives in general, they have a purpose, like epistles that are occasioned the purpose. But these stories are there in the Bible because they have a purpose. Okay? They are stories, they are purposeful stories retelling the historical events. So that blank is historical events of the past that are intended to give meaning and direction for a given people in the present. Now take a look at that sentence. So it's purposeful and it's retelling not a made-up story, but it's retelling something that is historical. It happened. And they are intended to give meaning and direction for a given people in the present, okay, for us today. So what we get is the direction, okay, the principles for us. So biblical narrative as a whole is whose story? It's God's story. As a whole, okay? There are so many stories in the Bible, but all of them, we must look at them as one story, and that is God's story. Okay? And it becomes our story as God allows us to participate in His story. Okay? Who of you watched the movie, what's this? C.S. Lewis, the witch, the wardrobe, what's that? Narnia? What was the title? The Witch, the Wardrobe, and... Anyway, do you remember Lucy? Yes, the wardrobe. Lucy, they were playing hide and seek.
Yeah.
Remember that story? The story of Narnia? And then continue the story. What happened? They were playing hide and seek, and then?
That transported to a different dimension.
She found the closet, and then the closet was magical because they opened the doorway to another world.
Which is?
Narnia.
The world of Narnia. And what was happening in Narnia?
There's a witch and a lion.
Okay, witch and lion. And in Narnia, when she entered when she entered Narnia, what was happening to Narnia?
It was being taken over by the witch.
Yes, actually, they were hiding in they were. The story goes like this. See Lucy, they were playing hide and seek with her brothers, and he saw this wardrobe, so she entered to hide there. So she was going back. So she entered Narnia. It opened onto Narnia, and Narnia was in what kind of a situation? It was snow. Actually, it was snow. It was winter all year. Okay, because of the curse of the white witch.
Yeah, no clue.
Okay, and then Aslan the lion will save Narnia from the wicked witch. Okay, now C.S. Lewis is a theologian, and Aslan is like a Christ figure, and the witch is like the evil forces, and Narnia is like us, it's like our kingdom. Now I'm telling you that story because when Lucy and her brothers entered Narnia, there was already a story well underway. The story is not about Lucy, not about his brothers, but it was about Narnia, about Aslan. That Aslan was saving Narnia, and all of us are like that. All of us. When God called us, we're like Lucy. When God called us into His kingdom, we are actually thrust into a story that's already well underway. And what is that story? It's almost like Narnia. There is conflict between what? Between God and Satan, which is basically in Narnia. That's the witch and Aslan, the lion. Okay? And you remember the Aslan even gave up himself. Remember that? So that's Christ. That was a Christ figure there. So you see, sometimes that's my point here. Okay, that every story. So when God created, okay, God existed even before, but when He created Genesis chapter 1, created the world, and it will somehow end somewhere here in Revelation 7:9, I guess. But it will still continue, and this is the kingdom of God, right? This is the promised kingdom of God, and Christ came somewhere here, and we are already here. Okay, this is the book of Acts, and this is what is happening today. This is 2019, so it's still continuing. This is the story of God, and what was the first story? Adam and Eve. What else? Abraham, etc., etc. So these stories, all of these stories, is actually this whole story. It's the God story. So, when you became a Christian, you entered this story. So whose story is it? But sometimes we feel that it is whose story? Ours. And we are the center of everything. Okay? God bless me, God, take care. But that's good, good prayer. But remember, your question should be the question of Lucy and her brothers. What is our role in Narnia? Now we're thrust in, it's not a magical robe, it was like a day when we gave our life to Christ, right? Yeah. And then we discovered that there is a battle between the forces of evil and God. And God is about to push the powers of evil so that His glory will come upon humankind. That's our story. Okay? So now every story in the Bible is all about what I have said. It's God because, when God created here, He wants to share His glory to humankind. That's His plan. Okay? But man fell. Remember? Adam and Eve. And then after Adam and Eve fell, what happened? It went really downwards. And I say here, it went south. Up to the part of where? Where was sin so blatant already?
Time of Noah.
Yes. And then time of Noah, not yet actually. Before Abraham, what happened? Before Abraham.
Abel.
Abel was here. That was the start. When one man killed 1/4 of the world. Because there were only 4. 1/4 of the population. Anyway, so the murder, right? And then Lamech even, and then there's a bright spot here. What's the bright spot? Enoch. He searched for God. And then Sodom and Gomorrah is still here. Sodom and Gomorrah is still somewhere here after Adam. So what happened here? What story happened here? That was really the pinnacle of sin. Okay? And then Abraham came. The story of Abraham. God said to Abraham, I will make a name for you. And I will make a name for you. Okay? So what happened for Abraham? The Tower of? When men wanted to make a name for themselves. Okay, and then God confused, etc. And then Abraham chapter 12 verse 1. Okay, after chapter 12, that is when, what is so important about Genesis 12? Okay, it is the, you already did the Old Testament survey? Okay, so what happened in Genesis chapter 12 verse 1? Okay, we're talking about the story, okay? I'm giving you a world, this bird's eye view because I want you to look at the Old Testament stories as a whole story. Even though there are so many stories, this is the story of God. That God is, God is saving us. God is, doing everything in order to bring about this Revelation 7:9. And I'll tell you what Revelation 7:9. So in 12:1, let's go there. He said in chapter 12, verse 1, let's go. You have to remember this. You have to remember because this is basically the same. Well, God promised that a seed will come from you, Eve. The seed that will trample the serpent. Who is that? How do you know it's Jesus? Because Paul explained that that's the seed, okay? In his letters, okay? Anyway, so then Tower of Babel, and then the call of Abraham. And what was the Abrahamic covenant all about? What was the promise of God to Abraham?
Make him a father of
Okay, I will make you a great nation and I will bless you. I will make your name great. And you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curse you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Okay? And that peoples, the peoples before, peoples with S, because those are the ethnicities. Okay? Races, all race. Okay? Peoples, nations, tribe, language, that is the heart of that. Okay? So through you, Abraham, all peoples, all ethnicities will be blessed. Okay? So God, that was the promise of God to Abraham. Now that gives you a hint of what God wants. So therefore, what does God want to happen in the end? He will bless what? Us.
Earth shall be blessed.
Yes. And specifically here, he said, I will bless you, and all peoples and earth will be blessed. That's the heart of God. Why do we say that? Do you guys watch Netflix?
Yeah.
And do you like to binge watch sometimes?
Yes.
Honestly speaking, binge watch, right? You binge watch a show, and sometimes you stay there. So it's 2 days already. You haven't taken a bath. You're still watching the same series, right? Do you do something like this? Do you when you start a series after 2 or 3 episodes, okay? And then what you do is you fast forward to the very end so that you will know what happened, so that you will know that, you know what, this is just a waste of my time. I'll not watch it anymore because I don't like the ending. Oh, this is a good ending. Okay, I'll go back. So now I know what will happen. So do you do that?
Sometimes.
No.
Sometimes, right? Well, it spoils everything. But even, but as Christians, we're actually in a story, okay? And our story is already an ending.
Yeah.
And sometimes we feel so low, we feel so, feel so sad, and sometimes things happen, right? Things happen in our lives, in our church. Oh Lord, is there hope? So it's good to always know what is the end. So what is the end of the story of God? If God wants all the nations of the earth to be blessed, Abraham, I will call you. I will make you into a great nation, so that nation will be a blessing to all nations. And what is that nation? Israel. And Israel shall be a blessing to all nations. You don't want to be blessing to all nations? I will send you even forcefully. Daniel was forced to go to Babylon. And he became what? He became a blessing to who?
Babylon.
To Nebuchadnezzar himself. Okay. So that's what God wants. And if you tell the story to your kids, that your Sunday school talks about Daniel, Daniel is brave, not eating vegetables, you miss the point. That's just the story of Daniel. But Daniel was brought by God forcefully. Okay? Why? Because they were in exile, right? The Babylonians conquered them because the Israelites were not listening to God. The noblemen were brought, and Daniel and his friends were there, and they became a testimony to Babylon, which was the world power at the time. Anyway, now, what is the end? It's in Revelation 7:9. Okay, go to Revelation 7:9. This is the end. Why do I say this is the end? What is the book of Revelation all about?
Prophecy.
Of the end. If somebody's binge watching the cosmic places and they want to know, and they're watching us doing WISL today, oh look, they're studying WISL. But what is the end? And they will fast forward the end because they can do that because they're watching Netflix, for example. This is just an illustration. And at the end is Revelation 7:9. Can somebody read Revelation 7:9?
After these things I looked,
Okay.
and behold, a great multitude which no one could number, all nations, tribes, peoples, and tongues, standing before the throne, before the Lamb, clothed with white robes, with palm branches in their hand.
Good. See? So what is so striking between 7:9 and chapter 12, verse 1 to 4? What is the same?
All nations.
God told Abraham, this is my story, my story. I will choose you and I will make you into a great nation so that that nation will be a blessing to every people of the earth. I want to redeem the people of the earth so that when the time comes, when everything is done, all peoples will be worshiping before the throne. Okay, so you go to chapter 12, verse 1, and Revelation 7:9. And you can actually tear all of these things. Tear it.
No.
And what is left actually is the real story. Not the real, but the essence of the story. That's the story of God. The story of God is Revelation 12:1 and 7:9. That's the first episode of the first series. This is the last episode of the last series. And all of this is the beautiful stories of God redeeming us. Everything here. It's not the story of Noah, the story of Jonah. It's the story of God loving the nations of the earth. That's why we must embrace diversity. We must embrace all nations. And I'm always telling the churches that we don't have to miss this. Okay? Now we're ready to go to our hermeneutics because now we know the general story. Because in the Bible, let's just fill in the blanks. There are three basic parts of narrative. So everything here, okay? So the narratives here all point to Revelation 7:9. And all of their beginning is Revelation 12:1. So remember, again, what is the heart of God? What does God want?
Everyone will be blessed.
Again, can you say that?
All nations.
Bless all nations.
That's what He wants. He wants that every nation will be represented in the throne at the end. Okay? That's the heart of God. That's why we have to be missiological. We must always try to bring the story of God to people who haven't heard it before, and some of those people may not even be the same culture that we have. Okay? So that's the hard part. Okay. Anyway, that's another lesson that I can teach about missions. Anyway, the three basic parts of narratives are: first, there are characters. There is a plot, and there is a plot resolution. Okay? That's the story. So what is a plot? When you say plot, what's a plot? Because we may not be understanding terms here. What's a plot? The drama, the flow. Okay? The flow of the story. And usually the plot is, it begins, and then there's like a problem, there's a what? There's a resolution, there's a climax, and then it gets resolved. And in the end, who wins? Always, God's story progresses. Whatever happens. What's your favorite story in the Bible again? I heard. Joseph. Why? With Joseph. What is the story of Joseph?
Well,
In a few words.
he became from slavery
Okay.
and to a prisoner
Okay.
and a governor.
Okay.
And
what's the end? What is the end? What did Joseph said in the end of the story?
he helped he helped his brothers.
Yes, and then he helped his brothers. Yes, he called him, and then he was standing. And his brother was crying. Oh, they're crying. Oh, forgive us, forgive us.
Yeah.
And then what did Joseph said? I forgive you. And then he said something very, very spectacular that talks about not himself but God. What did he say? You meant this for
To happen.
To harm me.
what? God
Intended for good.
intended.
Romans 8.
No, it's there in Joseph.
Yeah.
It's beautiful because the Joseph story is the longest narrative in the Bible. It talks about Jacob having 12 sons. He was favoring one son, Joseph. Joseph was sold by his brothers, right, to the Midianites, and he landed somehow in Egypt. And he went to the prison, and then from the prison he became that. And at the end he was saying, God did this. It's okay. I had a hard time. Now I'm here. We got separated. But you meant it for harm, but God will turn for good. Why? For whom?
For God's glory.
How can you say that? Who is Joseph? Why is it important for Joseph to be able to raise to that level of office in Pharaoh in order to preserve his brothers? Why is it important for his brothers to be preserved?
Because they're Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel.
Yes. And what is the important tribe there? Who was there? Was so important to God?
Lineage of Jesus.
Who is? What's his name?
Benjamin.
Judah.
The tribe of Judah.
Judah was there.
Judah.
Remember that the enemy of our soul, Satan, is always trying to cut the line of Christ. Who was the first one whom Satan murdered to cut the line of Christ?
Time of Moses.
Yes, good.
Okay.
It was Cain. Who killed who?
Abel.
Okay. Who died?
Cain.
Cain. So is that the way around?
Yeah.
So who is the line of Jesus? Is it Cain or is it Abel?
It's
Cain.
Cain.
Huh? Who died?
Abel.
Okay, Abel. Now, who is the evil one?
Cain.
Cain. So it could have been Cain. Cain could not have
Yeah,
been.
because
It was Abel. But, okay. I thought you already learned Old Testament survey. Go to Genesis. I'm telling you this. You know why I'm telling you this? Because you don't remember. Okay. Chapter 4, yes, chapter 4.
Chapter 4.
Okay. Verse 25. Okay. Verse 25. Adam lay with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son, and named him Seth. Okay, so Seth. Okay, Seth was the... Okay, so see that? Seth, Adam, and then it should have been Abel, but God replaced with Seth. And then Seth begot who? Enosh. Enoch. And then in that line was also Enoch. And then Noah. And then one of the sons. Okay? So always they were trying to cut the line of Jesus. So Joseph was like, you know when you read Genesis, it's like you're flipping through a photo book. We don't need any more albums. You see the photo albums?
Yeah.
In your photo albums, are the pictures all the same? The same neatly arranged?
No.
Or are some of the photos bigger, some are smaller?
Yeah.
Why are some of the photos bigger?
The big event.
A big event, more important, right? And they're arranged, that's like Genesis. In Genesis you find so many characters, but there are characters where the author would pause, like Joseph, and then he would spend a lot of chapters. Why? Because Joseph was important, but it was not Joseph who was important. What was important was Judah. Now, if you are a Sunday school teacher and you teach from that angle, oh, you will really surprise. You will really. If you're a Sunday school teacher, I always tell our Sunday school teachers this: tell the story of God, not the story of His character, because all of them are flawed. All of them. Okay, but it's God. So you see, you may not feel important in your family, but you may be a Joseph, and one of your brothers and sisters may one day become an important person in your family who will really be a blessing to all of you. So do your job. You're the ate, you're the kuya, you're the bunso, do your job. Because your job, if you do it for God, even your father and mother will be blessed, like the story of Joseph. It's deeper. And not only it's more biblical. Because that's the story of God. Okay, now another famous story is the big fish who ate who? Jonah. Now why is the Jonah story important? Based in Revelation 7:9 and Genesis 12:1. Why is Jonah's story very important to God?
Preach the people of Nineveh.
And who is the Ninevites? Who are the Ninevites?
They're the Syrians.
Yeah, they're the most wicked people.
Yeah.
And these Ninevites during that time, they were not just a superpower, but later on they will become a superpower.
Yeah, Assyrians.
But God called Jonah to preach to them, and they really repented, right? Because that's God's heart. God will eat you. School children, God will send a big fish if you don't share His word to your worst enemy. So you see, I mean, they will go Monday. They will go to their worst enemy in school, and they will forgive them. So you see, why? Because He made them a Jonah, so that others will know God's love. That's the story of Jonah. It's not a story of courage. It's a story of. Sometimes, I mean, we do that. David and Goliath. David slaying Goliath. You know what, guys? Even if you're small, even if you're, even if you have problems, what is the story of David and Goliath? What did David told Goliath? What did, see? So he lifted God's name.
Yeah.
So lift it there, lift it always, make it always. Remember this term, and hopefully I can come back here and I can teach you a whole subject on mission. You have to be missiological. That means when you wake up in the morning, your heart should be the heart of God. And what is the heart of God? The heart of God is that He wants to see every tribe, nation, tongue, and language represented in His throne room. If you do that, you'll be blessed. Your your family will be blessed.
Can we go back to Genesis 4:25?
This is already Old Testament story we're doing. Go ahead. What's that?
You said it was Abel, but it says that and Adam knew his wife again, and
Okay.
she bore a son named Seth.
Seth.
For God has appointed
Yes.
another seed for me instead of Abel, whom Cain killed.
Yes.
So, but
Yes. It was supposed to be Abel.
okay, so Abel,
This should be the line.
so Abel did not have a kid.
No, he died.
We were just kidding you.
But Seth replaced Abel. That's God's mercy. God could have erased everybody. Up to this point, He waited. That the point in God was sorry that He, right? It says there, but God did not erase. And it started again from scratch. No, He persisted. That's why we have Christ. Christ is a blessing to the nations. He is Christ. He is. I mean, He. In all of His, and we will learn that in the Gospels, He was always teaching the people of Israel to love to love the nations, because that's the heart of God. Now, who is the new Israel today? Who is it? Us. The church is Israel. And 12:1, you will be a blessing to all nations. That's why we are sons and daughters of Abraham, because of the Abrahamic covenant. Okay, if you do 12:1, if you become a blessing to all nations, then you are doing the Abrahamic covenant. That's why Israel is not doing this. That's why they really had so much problems. Because instead of reaching the other nations, instead of being a light to the nations, they become inward. So if a church, so if you know the story of Jonah can be a story of the church. God will, you know what? God will do things. God will even shake you, so that He will send you to other places. And I always tell our church this: why are you here in America? Why are you, if I travel to other places, why are you here? Oh, because of economic standpoint. No, it's because God sent you here because He wants you to be a Jonah. He wants you to be an Abraham because of 7-9. Okay? In our Middle East churches, we have nannies who take care of babies in the palaces of the Saudi royals, and they're singing gospel songs. Yeah, they have reports like that. We have chefs working in this Middle East palaces, and they are Christians. So you see, God will use even economy and hardship to make you do your job, because it's not our story; it's the story of God. Anyway, I'm already preaching, but you have to understand that, because that's the big story, and I will go there. That's not good anymore. So this is called the third level. There are 3 levels. Whenever you open your Bible, okay, Joseph, Jonah, what else? David, Goliath. So these are the stories, right? So first is the third level. I'll just say it first. That's called the redemption, salvation, history of the Bible. Okay? So where are we? There, the third level. It's called the salvation history or redemption history. Okay. So next, I'll just give you the answer to the blank, and I'll explain again. Okay. So the third level is the whole story of the Bible. So what I just presented to you is the big story. Some call it the meta-narrative. The big story of the Bible is that God wants to be worshipped, adored, and loved by the nations. That's God's heart. Okay? So that plot of creation, fall, deed of redemption, Christ, final redemption, kingdom of God is the whole story of the Bible. Okay? And then second level is called the covenantal history. Okay? Why? We have many covenants in the Bible, but the more important covenant or testament is what we call the Old and the New Testament. So when you look at the story, you ask yourself, where is it in the Bible? Is it in the Old or in the New Testament? So where will I cut the line here? If this is the third level of if this whole story is called the third level of looking at it, now you have a story, okay? The second level divides it into the Old and the New Testament. So where will I draw the line? Here?
No.
Here? Here. Where Jesus is. Okay? Because this is the New Testament and this is the Old Testament. Okay, in the Old Testament, okay, let's go first to the first level. Okay? Now, so the story of God's constituting a people for His name, that's the second level. So He always wants to do that. He always wants to form a people to be a light to the other peoples. Okay? So so He constituted His people by a former covenant, the old covenant, and the new covenant. Okay? So the Abrahamic covenant, give me another covenant, the Noahic covenant, the Noah covenant, etc., etc., etc. So those are all the Old Testament. And then the New Testament. How do you know that we are today in the new covenant? How do you know that? You celebrate that every first Sunday, I guess, in this church. So what does the pastor say? This is the what? Of the
New covenant.
Yeah. So the new covenant. So we are now in the new covenant. That's why we are the new Israel. The church is the witness of God to the nations. We are the lamp that must not be hidden underneath the table. We are the lamp that must be held up. Sitting on a hill. We're that. We're the new Jerusalem. We're Zion. Okay? So this is Zion. This should be the light to this place. Okay? So we are that. So whenever you have a story, you first think of this. Okay, what is God is drawing people unto Him, every nation, tongue, language, and tribe. That's the big story. Okay, and it's divided into two. In the Old Testament, who did He constitute as a people?
Israel.
Yes. So this is the story, not our story, but the story of Israel. Okay, how He formed Israel to be alive. So what happened here? He called Abraham. Then Abraham. Not yet. Isaac. Isaac. Okay, and then Jacob. Okay, and then the 12. Well, basically Judah, right? Etc. 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 And then it reached who? It reached who? And then David here. David, right? That's just one line. That's just one line. David, and then here who? Here. Jesus. Okay. Okay? So that's the story now. That's the old covenant. I will preserve you, Israel, because from you will come the Messiah. Because from you you'll be the light, the nation. I will, I will lift you up. Is there anything special about Israel? None. You're just like, God said, you're just like any other nation. You're special because I am your God. Okay? So now, beginning with Jesus, it's now the church. Okay? So the story of Acts, the story of Acts, the Gospels, is this part. Okay? But this is all the story of Israel. So very important that we look at it that way so that we can learn how to go to the there and then. Okay? Now, the first level is what we all know. The first level are the individual narratives. Okay? So you will locate the individual narratives. Okay? So basically all the narratives are in the Old Testament. So we're talking about the nation of Israel. Okay. So there are individual stories that make up the first and the second levels. Each narrative must be understood in the context of the third level, which is the redemptive history, and its covenantal history, the old and the new. Okay? So that's why when you read the Old Testament, you have to be somehow, you have to really dive into their culture, into their time, into the mind of the people back then. Okay? I actually told that story last night. I think we're the first readers of Genesis. Moses was the author. Who was the first ones who read it? Joshua, and even before Joshua, the people in the wilderness, the Israelites in the wilderness. So it's like that. So when you learn the story of Moses, etc., 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 so you will know, oh, so God is preserving them. Okay? God is teaching them who He is, etc., etc. Okay. So any questions at this point? You're overwhelmed, guys. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, right? Kasi kung this is just 3 days. I do this for a whole semester. Okay, but if there's anything that you must remember, it's this: Genesis 12:1, Revelation 7:9. And if somebody asks you, what is the purpose of God? The purpose of God is to be loved, adored, served, and worshipped by nations. And I talk about nations, not America, the Philippines. No. It means every people group, so that's His heart. Okay? Anyway, you have to remember that. So whenever you are reading a story, you have to look for that story there. Because it's there. Okay? And I'll show you later where. I'll give you an example, a very beautiful example. Okay, where are we? I'm excited to give you an example because it's okay. Just the characteristics. If you read the very interesting thing about Old Testament, especially Old Testament narratives, is that the narrator's role is to draw you as the hearer or reader into the narrative so you can see things for yourself. It's always the narrator who's speaking. Okay? It's like storytelling. Okay? It's like, maalaala mo kaya. Somebody, like, the stories of Lola Basyang. Okay, the stories of grandma. This grandma's story. Okay, grandchildren, sit down. I will tell you a story. So it's always like a narrator is always talking. Why do you think it's written that way? Why do you think it's always from? There's the narrator's role is to draw the hearers. Why do you think that it's as if somebody's telling the story? Why? Think for a moment. Don't think about the day. Okay? Why, Moses wrote Genesis 1, he wrote the story of Joseph. Moses writing that. Where did Moses get that story? Not from God. Remember, they were slaves in Israel. They knew somehow they were kind of not really special, but they had a story. So why didn't the story of Joseph, Isaac, Jacob, this Potiphar's wife, what else, Joseph, why was that story not lost? If Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 was written in the time of Moses, Moses was somewhere here already.
Storytelling.
And when you do storytelling, what do?
Pass it on.
You pass it on. And you're like the narrator. Okay, the stories in the Old Testament especially were first passed on orally. Kinukwento, hindi sinasulat. It was an oral history. Okay, as a father, I teach my children the story of Joseph. Then you teach your children. So nothing is written because before they don't write. Only special people had the papyrus during that time. Okay, so it was an oral history. It was storytelling. That's why when you read the Old Testament, it's like somebody's telling you a story. It's like somebody's sitting down there and they're telling you a story. It's not like today as you're watching a movie or reading a novel. It's not like that. The characters, the characters are the ones in there. So it's like that. Okay, and I'm telling you that so that you will appreciate it better. Why? Because the story is told in the point of view of the narrator, and basically the narrator is you doing it from God's point of view. Okay, so it's fantastic, right? It's really awesome that when God God inspired these authors to tell the story, not from the point of view of the characters, but from the point of view of God. It's as if God was the one narrating the story. So it's really His story, not our story. It's not the story of the characters in the Bible, but it's God. This is the story of God. He loves us, that He wants to redeem every people. There's no one greater or lesser in His eyes. All of us He created equal, and He wants all of us to experience blessing. Okay? So, it's very in America, we talk about diversity. God is the God of diversity. And we must understand that word from His story. Okay? Anyway, so the scenes, this is also interesting. Because the Hebrew narratives, it goes from scene to scene. Sometimes very quick, sometimes long. It pauses. Joseph, right? After the brothers, right? They dropped Joseph in the pit, and he sold a slave. And then it's like the fast forward, and then Joseph is here. Then it slows down. Then fast forward again. So it's scenes. Okay. You know why? Because the important thing for the narrator is not really telling the story chronologically and in detail, but the important thing is the God hand. And what is the God hand, right? Why must Joseph be imprisoned? Why?
So you can tell the dream.
The cook, right? The cook. The cook, right? And you know what? And then the king dreamt, and then there was the cook. I know somebody who interpreted my dream. He's languishing there in the dungeon. Okay, so see? So then it gets fast forwarded again. So you see the hand of God happening. Okay? So number 2, so Hebrew narratives go from scene to scene rather than following a specific character. Okay? Now together each scene makes up a single narrative. It's always that. It's always God's salvation. Okay? Characters often appear, Are you ready there?
Yes.
Okay, characters often appear in contrast with each other. Okay, there's always the protagonist and the antagonist. In Tagalog, at saka kontrabida. Okay, protagonist, antagonist. Protagonist is the one who is Joseph, who is David, and the protagonist is the Goliath. Okay, in Esther, the book of Esther, who is the protagonist?
Esther.
Esther is the bida. Esther, who else? Mordecai. And who is the antagonist? Yes, yes, okay. Okay, so the one who wants to hang the Israelites, etc. If Esther did not do his job, Israel will be decimated. And what happens if Israel gets decimated?
No blessing to the
No blessing to the nations. Why? Because there will be no what? No Jesus. So it's not the story of Esther, it's still the story of God. Do you know in Esther there's no mention of God? It's the only book that has no mention of God, but God's hand is in every scene. Right? So who are Bible or children's church teachers? Do you teach children's church? Okay. So begin telling the story in a missiological point of view, okay? Guys, God will bring you to the lowest point of your life and to the highest point of your life because He wants to use you. Now, if you teach your children like that, I mean, they become doctors, and they will struggle in their lives, but if they remember what you said, you'll always be, I am not the special one. God is the one special. And my life becomes special if my life is in line with God's story. If I don't do my job, problems will happen. Okay? But the problems will always be there. But problems will be more problematic. Okay, who they are or the changes in their character are revealed by their words and actions. Very beautiful. Because the narrator will speak. He will quote the words of the characters. The characters will be speaking. It's like the story of Lola Bashang and the grandma telling the story. You know what? The lion said, I will devour you. So it's like the characters, they're who they are. It will not say, well, Esther is the good person here and this. No. It's because of what they say that will bring out their character. If they're evil or if they're good. If they are for God or if they are against God. Okay? So that's what you have to look. Okay? That's why I'm always going back to our children because for me children are very special. Because they're the future of not our church, because they're the future of God's story. Okay? If you don't teach them well, sometimes we lose it. Okay? God will use others to do that, but we lose the opportunity. Anyway, but my point is, you don't have really to sometimes challenge yourselves. You don't. The easiest thing really is to download stories in the internet for children. To buy these expensive things and teach children. You can create your own lessons. It doesn't have to be very difficult. Just stick to God's story. Remember, the third level is the salvation history. Okay, that is the line of Jesus. Okay, tell them those stories, and then the second level is: are you in the Old Testament, where Israel is the one being used by God, or are you in Acts, where the church is being used by God? And then the individual stories are the level one. Okay. Now you're saying something.
Can we in general perspective?
Okay.
Can we say that God is the bida always?
Yes.
And then the kontrabida is
After that's the last part. That's the
and we
positive.
are the agonist. Is that
Agonist, yes. The agonist, the protagonist, antagonist, and the agonist. What is the agonist?
agonist is siya yung palaging naapektuhan?
Yeah, agonist is the collateral damage. Agonists are the people at play. They're the extra.
Extra.
Okay, but we're affected. The extra is always affected. These are the antagonists, the protagonist antagonists. But there are other characters here who gets affected by what's happening between them. So we are sometimes that Okay, and always, this is, well, we are that. This is God, and this is evil, the devil, Satan. Okay, so that's really, so the kingdom of God will always be pushing. God said, Peter, I will build my church, and the gates of hell cannot prevail against it. That's the story always. God is pushing against evil. Ever since. And He will do that. That's why this life is a hard life for us. That's why I don't believe really in prosperity gospel, because for us the prosperity is up there, not here. Okay? Because if prosperity is here, then this story does not mean anything. Okay? This is okay, anyway. But I have to stick to my because I cannot extend my stay here. Christmas already. Okay. The initial dialogue reveals a clue to the plot. Okay, usually the initial dialogue is like a Hollywood movie, and Hollywood movies have actually used the Bible sometimes as a way of telling a story. Remember, when you watch a movie, the first scene is very important, right? And then sometimes the first scene, and then it goes back or it goes forward. Okay? So that's also the same. The first few sentences reveals already the plot and the character of the speakers. Okay? So contrastive dialogue often functions as a way of characterization. The way they speak towards each other already say who they are. So one of the characters will repeat or summarize the narrative in a speech to emphasize the crucial parts of the story. Have you seen that? In Acts, we see that in the Old Testament. The story happens, and then somebody tells the story again. Have you ever? Okay? So it's like it's being repeated. So when a part of a story has happened already, and then it gets repeated again, told by someone who saw it in that narrative, that means that part is very important. Okay, it's a crucial part of the story. Okay. Plot, dialogue. Okay, the narrative has a beginning, middle, and end. Okay, so remember that, huh? Okay. The plot moves at a much slower pace. Very often, a slowed pace is a signal pointing to the narrator's point of view. That's very important. So, in this hermeneutics that we're learning, if in the epistle, what's important is the occasion, the intended meaning of the epistle writer, of the letter writer, in the narratives. The very important thing is, what is the point of view of the narrator? Or sometimes the character. Sometimes the character will say this, sometimes the narrator will say this. In Esther, what is the point of view, do you think is the important point of view in Esther? Do you know the story of Esther? Okay, what is the important point of view? Somebody said it. There's a character there that said it. Okay. Yes. Okay. Esther, you don't know. God may have raised you for such a time as this. Or He didn't say God. You may have been raised for such a time as this, or something like that. Anyway, Esther will be your assignment. So, but let us go. I'll show you something. Okay. Let's go to the book of Ruth. Okay. So, in the book of Ruth, where do you find that? That's the first level. So, what's the second level category of book of Ruth? Second level. Is it what covenant? Old or new? Old. Okay. Old. So, it's the story of who? Ruth is the story of? No. What people? Israel. Okay, so Israel. Okay, Israel being used by God. Okay, remember that. Remember that. And then again, what is the whole third level? What's the third level? Meta narrative of God. What's the story of God?
Redemption.
Redemption. Yes, salvation history. That God will always constitute the people to bring about the end of the binge watching, the end story, the end episode, the last episode of the last series, which is Revelation 7:9. Now, with that in mind, let's go back to Ruth and let's read it as if it's the first time we're reading it. I lost my Bible. Okay, let's go to Ruth. And then what I'm going to do in Ruth, you will do, okay, for Esther. And that will be the third assignment, I think. Okay, book of Ruth. So what time did the book of Ruth happen? What moment was that? Huh?
Judges.
Very good. Why do you think? Because you're looking at it.
Because I have the summary.
Okay. Now, if you know the third level, if you know the story of Seth, Abraham, etc., it's very easy for you to look for the Bible, for the book. If I say, okay, go to the book of Ruth. Oh, Ruth lived during the time of the Judges. So I will look for it after Judges. I will not look at it after Malachi or before. Okay, so Ruth lived during the time of the Judges. Do you know what the time of the Judges was? Before the time of the Judges was what?
Kings.
No. Kings was after the Judges.
Prophet? No.
Okay? But before it was Moses, then they crossed the promised land. Then who was the leader?
Joshua.
Then Joshua, was he able to anoint the next leader? Who was the next leader after Joshua? You don't know because there was no one. There was no leader. Moses was Joshua. After Joshua, there was no real leader. So what happened was, because really there were some compromises as well, some of the nations that Joshua did not conquer, they reconquered some of the land. That's why when Joseph died, they were without leaders. They become very tribal. Okay, so those 12 tribes, the kanya-kanya, they were very tribal, and they had problems. Okay, what is the occurring theme of Judges? What is the occurring phrase in Judges? Okay, the people did what they saw. Okay,
What was right in their eyes?
Huh?
What
Good.
was right in
Okay.
their eyes?
So in other words, in the book of Judges, they were, they had no direction. They just did what they saw fit, and then they started worshiping idols again, and then the enemies will conquer them, and they will look up to God, and God will what will God do? He will raise what? A judge like a leader. And who are the famous judges? Samson. Who else? Gideon. Who else? The girl.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What's the girl judge? Anyway, Deborah. Okay. And then during that time, somewhere there, Ruth came. Okay. So now go to the book of Ruth. Tell me what happened the first chapter. See, in the days when the judges ruled, that at once will the narrator saying, the narrator wants to tell you that you are entering a story during the time of Judges, and if you know what is happening in Judges, you will at once know where you're coming from, where the story will be coming from. It will be a difficult time. It will be a time when they have no leaders. There will be a time that most have forgotten about God. Okay. It is a time where their enemies were once again recapturing the land that Canaan has. It was a hard time. So in the book of Ruth, who are the characters? Naomi. Who else?
Boaz.
Boaz. Yes. Who else? Well, Ruth, right? And how did the story go? It's like our story. It's like your story. What happened to the family of Naomi? They were from what place? They were from what place? Very important place. Very important. They were from Bethlehem. Okay? Bethlehem is the house of bread. Bethlehem. Okay? So why is Bethlehem important?
Birthplace.
Don't tell me. It seems that Bethlehem is a special place. Because many have forgotten about God. But Bethlehem is kind of special. There was still God there. People were still faithful to God in Bethlehem. So, but there was a famine, right? So they went to what land? They went to a foreign land called Moab in Ruth, right? And then what happened to the family of Naomi?
They died.
Huh?
Her sons died.
The father died.
Okay, tell me first. Have you read the story of Ruth?
No.
Not yet. Okay, I'll tell you the story. Not yet. Who of you have read? or familiar.
Familiar.
Familiar. So Naomi, what happened to the husband of Naomi?
Died.
What happened to his sons?
Died.
Died as well. The two sons died, her husband died. So they were left with Naomi, Ruth, and
The other
The one. The other.
what is his name?
Daughter-in-law.
Okay, Orpah.
Orpah.
Okay?
Yes, Orpah.
And then
Sounds like
Oprah. Orpah. Okay. So the husband died. Before the husband died, the sons married.
Yeah.
The sons married. One married Ruth, one married Orpah. And then all of these men died. And they were left with all widows.
Yes.
Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah.
Yeah.
So Naomi said, I'm going back because I heard that in Israel, in my place, things are becoming better. I'll go back, even if I'm a widow, whether they accept me or not, I'll go back. And then they're going back. And then she told Ruth and Orpah, they stopped in that border, crossing from Moab to Israel. And what did she say to her
Go
daughters-in-law?
to their home.
Go return each
Uwi
to
na
her
kayo.
mother's house.
Mamamatay tayong pare-pareho. So they were really so, when you're a widow during those times, you're very poor. And, so it was like a curse. And for Naomi, it was really a curse. Everyone died. Okay, the husband, the sons. And what's important, why is the widow's predicament very sad during those times, especially in Israel? Because if you no one will provide, and you will have no one. You have no heir. Your land will be taken away from you. Because only the son can be an heir. Okay? She had nothing. Go back. You're Moabites. Ruth and Orpah, you're Moabites. Go back. Go back. Are you expecting me to have sons? And then to marry my sons again? Because during that time, the sons can actually marry a widow. The other brothers can marry a widow. So that the inheritance will be safe. Okay? So even if I give birth today, will you wait for them to grow up? And how can that happen? I'm a widow. Okay, and then Orpah left. What did Ruth tell Naomi? I will go with you. And she said what? Your people will be my people. And your what? Your God will be mine. And who is Ruth? Ruth is a what? She's a Moabite. Revelation 7:9. When we all go there in heaven, we will see who? We will see Ruth the Moabite. She will be there. She's an Israelite, but because of the hardship, because of the story of Naomi, they went to Moab, and in Moab, husband, sons died. Ruth is the only one. Ruth was observing Naomi. Naomi is still faithful to her God. Who is this God? And I think Ruth began to research who is Yahweh. And she made, she came to the point that I will also love Yahweh because of what I saw from my mother-in-law. So that's not in the story, but I'm just assuming, because why will Ruth say, I will go with you to a foreign land? I will go to you back into Bethlehem. Why? Ruth. Okay, let's go to Ruth. Let's go to that very beautiful verse 8. Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, chapter 1, verse 8, go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to your dead and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband. Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud and said to her, we will go back with you to your people. But Naomi said, return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons? Who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughter. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, wouldn't you wait? So you see how the characters are prolonging this? Because there's meaning here. It's not just drama. It's not just, it's not like that. Every word in the end chapter will be almost repeated. Okay. So, no, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you. Bitter. Naomi. Okay? Because the Lord has gone out again. At this they went again. Then Orpah, the other one, kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. But Ruth clung to her. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. To her people and to her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people and your God will be my God. You know, I can just see God looking down from heaven. And he's saying, that's my story.
Wow.
And that's my heart for people who do not know me, to know me eventually. Not because hello Ruth, love me. No, because of people like you and me becoming the light. Okay? So that's the story. And then tell me the next thing that happened. They went now to Bethlehem. And then Naomi said, oh Ruth, we'll die. We can't eat anything. We don't have grain. Okay, go now. We have a relative named Boaz. You know, go to, not yet. Actually, not yet. There is a gleaning. There was a law, the Mosaic law, that if you are from Israel and you harvest your wheat and you miss some of the wheat, if you miss harvesting, don't go back. Leave it for the widows, for the poor. So that's what the Ruth did. Yeah, she was gleaning. And then who caught her attention? Who was the person who caught Ruth's attention?
Mr. Boaz.
Boaz, the owner of that field, caught. Who's that girl? Oh, and they told the story of Ruth and Naomi. Oh, she's a Moabite. And you know what? Yeah, Naomi, she's your relative, right? Yeah, and the story. Oh, wow. And then Boaz was so amazed by the story of Ruth, that Ruth exchanges people for Yahweh. You know, Ruth doesn't know what is the future there in another foreign land, but she just knew that the God in that land is the God that my mother-in-law worships, and I see my mother-in-law as a good example, and she will be my God, your people. So it was a beautiful story. And Boaz, you know, and then she came home. Ruth came home. Naomi, mother, you won't believe my story. And he's all about the story of Boaz, and this coincidence. And Naomi said, you know what? He is a kinsman redeemer. That means that Boaz has actually he can marry, he can be your husband, because he must take you as his wife, because that's the rule here in Israel. So now do this. So cut the long story short. So Boaz said, they met, and this. So much stories behind in between, but to cut the long story short, Boaz said, you know what? I'm the second in line. There's not a relative that should redeem you. But you know what? Because I like your story, because I'm so amazed by who you are, your character, I will go to him tomorrow, and I will ask him. So tomorrow, ask him, oh God, will you take there's Ruth here, and her husband is your relative. Will you take her? No, I won't. You take her. So it's clear now. So cut the long story short, Boaz and Ruth married. And who came out? Okay? What happened to that marriage? Okay. In that marriage, she gave birth to a son. So see, so you see this three widows who had nothing, with no hope. Now she had a son. Now go to the last chapter of Ruth, and tell me what happened there.
Then they got Obed.
Okay, so Boaz took Ruth, that's true, 13, and she became his wife. Then he went to her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a kinsman redeemer, the mother-in-law. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child, laid her in her lap, and cared for him. The women living there, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. Now, what is very important about Obed, the son?
He was the
The father of Jesse.
And Jesse. Who was Jesse?
Father
Father of David.
And who is David?
that line for Jesus.
David became king.
King.
And the Davidic covenant is out from you, David will come the Messiah.
Exactly.
So you see, even the story of Ruth is the story of God.
Yeah.
Ruth is the great grandmother, and more great, of Jesus Christ, who is not even an Israelite. So he can turn a bad story into a good story. Why? Because we are the center? No, because he is the center. He will use everything. It's either we go, it's really like that. It's either we go or we are forced to go. I always tell our church, why are you here? Why are you in America at such a time as this? Why? So is it time to look at yourself, to look at your blessings? Why? What is God's plan for you? Why did God allow you to have some difficulties in the Philippines, and why did you have to fly and leave your family? Why? So it's the story, also the story of Ruth. So you see the richness of your Bible study now. The richness of what you will teach your children in Sunday school. Because you know what? If you remember the third level. Again, what's the third level? The redemption, the salvation story of God. The whole big story. The second level is the Old Testament and the New Testament. Why is it special? God is constituting a people called Israel. God is constituting a people called the church. Why? To be a light to the nations. Okay? To the world. Okay? Now, the first level story are the individual stories. Now, these individual stories will just be like fairy tales to a kid if you don't tell the story this way. What they will remember is a man eaten by a big fish, and that's it. And they will grow up and they will be taught by professors in universities, and their professor will tell them that what you have learned in Sunday school are all a joke. Why? Hey, look at the stories. Can you even believe those stories? And they will debunk. Why? Because it's always like that. I'm not against professors. We have a professor here on the university. I'm not against professors. But this is a philosophy. This is, remember, the kingdom of God is pressing against evil, but evil is pressing back.
Yeah.
Okay? That's why it's very important. Stories are very important for an Israelite because the faithfulness, the grace, who Yahweh is preserved because dads and moms would tell the story to their children. Well, there was no Sunday school before. It was fathers teaching them of the story of Israel, the second level story. They were teaching. So the people of Israel did not lose that. But the sad thing is, they call themselves the chosen people, but they fail to ask, why are we chosen?
Sorry, what's the purpose?
But it sounds familiar. We're also like that.
Yeah.
God loves the church. Why? Because He wants to bless us. He wants to, make me healthy. He wants to make me happy, take away my problems. Just that. So that's why sometimes the gospel is weak. That's why people are not more, drawn to the gospel because the gospel sometimes becomes self-centered, not God-centered. Anyway, I'm already preaching. See? Okay, so anyway, the last part, it just says the original audience of Hebrew narratives were hearers, and I said it already, it was an oral history. And number 2, I've already said that. In a way, so last part, God is the hero in every story. Somebody said that a while ago. Who was that? Luz, you said that. God is the hero in every story. So the blank level must be understood. What is this narrative's place in redemptive history? What level is that?
Third.
Good. The third level. Okay. The blank level perspective. What did this story mean to those who first heard it? Was it the Israel people? Was it the church? Was it the second? So in every biblical narrative, God is the ultimate hero. So that's the first level. Okay. Now, assignment. Can you open to your assignment? Can you go to the assignment entitled Lesson 3?
Oh, lesson.
Lesson 5, sorry, Lesson 5.
Lesson 5 is here.
It's still there.
Oh, it's still there.
Wow.
Wow.
Yun
Ang
yung
dahan-dahan mo.
Okay, that's good. That's
Parang
not
mag-attend
perfect.
kami
It's
ulit.
not to overwhelm you. Yeah, not to overwhelm you. Okay.
That's the only assignment.
Sige. Then, I'll explain this and let's have a 5-minute break, okay?
Marami pa pala sa akin.
Yeah?
I thought that's it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ano pa?
Because it's